Alright y'all, we're back. And with the news of Capcom Fighting Collection 2 coming out in 2025, man, I cannot wait. Some videos popped up on my timeline, and one of the videos that caught my attention was Capcom vs. SNK 2 being the greatest fighter ever. The greatest fighting game ever. That's a bold statement to make. So I'm interested to actually look at this video and react to it. And today's video we're gonna react to is from Top Hat Gaming Man. Shout out to Top Hat Gaming Man. I've done a few of his videos before. It's very interesting to see his perspective on if Capcom vs. SNK 2, the greatest fighter ever made, like the greatest fighting game ever made at that. And this is actually one of the titles that's going to be on Capcom Fighting Collection 2. But before we get started, man, with the video, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, notification bell, like the video, comment something, and let's get to it.
Capcom vs. SNK 2 is absolutely amazing. Throughout the fighting game genre's rich history, few titles offer the insane level of quality in which this one brings to the table.
Definitely a great game.
In fact, some would go as far to tell you that this was the apex of sprite-based fighters, delivering a magic moment that has since never
this was
been
one of
topped.
the ones, for real.
This crossover game has it all, so join me today as we celebrate its history and look at exactly what it was that made this one so special. How did it top its predecessor? Hello ladies and gentlemen, Big Daddy Top Hat here. This is the story of Capcom vs. SNK 2, Mark of the Millennium 2001, one of the greatest fighting games ever made.
Let's see why. Let's talk about
By
it.
the summer of 2001, we were now at a point in history where the Capcom Versus concept was 5 years old. In the previous half a decade, we had experienced a lot of cool stuff. This all started in 1996 with a tantalizing release of X-Men vs Street Fighter,
Classic.
which was spurred on and inspired by the inclusion of Akuma being placed as an unlockable character within X-Men Children of the Atom. This was followed up by Marvel Superheroes vs Street Fighter, which expanded the choice of characters to include Marvel characters other than just the X-Men.
Hey, shout outs to Capcom, man. Capcom and Marvel for giving us such classic games in our childhood and continuing the legacy of these Versus series and these fighting games. Because like I said in previous videos, man, I remember where I was at when a lot of these games came out. And I still remember the first time playing each and every one of these games and the feeling that I had playing them. It's like no other, man. Like, we're definitely going to experience that feeling again when these titles drop on modern platforms, though. But man, you had to be there. You had to be there to experience like the original versions of these games when they first dropped. But let's get back to it, man.
Which was then followed up by the third game, Marvel vs Capcom, which would obviously expand Capcom's lineup to include more than just the cast of Street Fighter, introducing Mega Man, Morrigan and company. All three of these games were created to run on the Capcom System 2 arcade board, but the fourth entry, Marvel vs Capcom 2, would be programmed to run on more powerful hardware, the Sega Naomi arcade board, making it not only easy to port the game to the Sega Dreamcast, but also allow for the introduction of 3D backdrops,
Shout out to Sega
and for the
Dreamcast.
roster to be expanded to include 56 characters. This game was absolutely huge in scope. With Capcom and Marvel's working partnership coming to an end, fortunately the concept would be replaced with a new crossover on Naomi hardware, resulting in
SNK.
Capcom vs SNK Millennium Fight 2000, a game developed and published by Capcom to include characters owned by Capcom and fellow fighting game giants SNK. The agreement that had previously been made between SNK and Capcom had resulted in the release of a card used by SNK for the Neo Geo Pocket Color, and of course the Capcom produced fighting game for the Naomi and home platforms. While each separate company retained 100% of the profit generated by the crossover games they created each, the deal was popular enough and beneficial enough for both parties to create more games on both sides.
So far, we're seeing the history of Capcom versus SNK in a lot of these versus games. But let me know as of right now, like, how do you feel about Capcom versus SNK 2 being the greatest fighting game ever? Till this day, like, it still feels great to play. Like, it just feels smooth to play. I don't want to say it's a flawless game, but man, it's like the fighting engine and the characters that come with it, man. Like, this game, this is one of the games that was on the upper echelons, man. Like, it's one of them ones though, man. But it's interesting to see like how far we've come along in technology as to even bringing these games back though, man. And I'm excited to see this though, man. But let's get right back to it, man. My bad, y'all.
Capcom vs SNK 2 Mark of the Millennium 2001, known as Millionaire Fighting 2001 in Japan, would be Capcom's epic follow-up to Millennium Fight 2000, and what an impressive title this is. For those who have played both of these games straight from the get-go, you will notice a new feature, a change in the groove system. In Millennium Fight you could choose between two. One groove offered mechanics more in line with the Street Fighter series, whereas the other was more in line with mechanics found in the King of Fighters series. Mark of the Millennium 2001 differs in that it now offered 6 different grooves instead of just 2,
man.
which really switches things up. So let's discuss how each of these grooves work. The C groove is a system reminiscent of the one found in the Street Fighter Alpha series, as observed
That's my favorite
in the
groove.
third installment through the Aism. Its primary aspect involves a super gauge that is divided into 3 tiers.
It's crazy because it was unheard of to have that many fighting systems in one game. Now, I will say, there's one in particular game that kind of missed the mark by putting too many fighting systems in one game, and each character having its own individual fighting system, which threw the game off and had it super unstable, which is Capcom Fighting Evolution. I know that's a lot of you guys love this game and it brings back memories, but y'all got to understand how unstable that game was. And there's a reason why a lot of people disapproved of that game. But the reason why people love Capcom versus SNK 2 was it's like everything meshed well together perfectly. The background, the music was so good in this game, underrated. Background, 3D backgrounds, combos, the fighting systems, the amount of characters. Like effective characters too, not just there. I don't think there was really any throwaway characters on this game, because there are a lot of fighting games that have throwaway characters where it's just a copy of somebody or somebody that's just useless. Every character, let me not say 90% of the characters on Capcom versus SNK 2 had its purpose and meant something.
This gauge gradually fills during the course of the battle, enabling the utilization of super moves. The potency of the button pressed for executing these moves not only influences the inflicted damage, but also dictates the extent of the gauge depletion. Additionally, this system is the sole groove that permits aerial blocking. Other gameplay elements encompass a dash, guard cancel counterattack, roll-in dodges, and tactical recoveries. The A groove is just like Street Fighter Alpha 3's Vism. This mechanic also deactivates super moves in exchange for custom combos. These custom combos enable players to link hits seamlessly into each other within a combo. To initiate these combos, players need to press both hard attack buttons when their gauge is completely filled, after which it will gradually decrease. Additional gameplay elements include dash, guard, cancel, counterattacks, rolling dodges, and fall breakers. The P groove employs the iconic Super Gauge format from Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, as seen in...
And I wonder which game is that supposed to have like the one button specials. Is it going to be Capcom vs SNK 2 for the Capcom Fighting Collection 2? Is if so, it's going to make it easier to play, man. Hey.
Street Fighter Alpha 3's X's and variant. The system revolves around a solitary gauge that gradually fills as the player inflicts or receives damage. Once this gauge reaches capacity, it grants access to a potent super move, or super desperation move. This mechanism also accommodates parrying, enabling players to deflect incoming attacks strategically to set up counterattacks, a technique reminiscent of the Street Fighter 3 series. Additional gameplay elements encompass a dash ability, a short jump mechanic, and tactical recoveries.
Look at the details. Look at the details in this game, man. Like, it's the little stuff. Like, it feel like it looks like it's raining. I know that don't mean nothing to a lot of y'all because we're used to like incredible graphics now, but back then this was a huge deal, man. Like this really set the mood and the tone of games that you played, man. Like little stuff like this mattered.
Around SNK game mechanics. So with that said, let's address the S groove, a gameplay mechanic reminiscent of the King of Fighters 94 and 95, along with the extra mode from 97 and 98. In this system, players are required to accumulate energy in their power gauge by guiding their character to channel their inner chi. When the character's health is critically low, indicated by the traditional flashing red gauge, they gain the ability to perform level 1 super moves and super desperation moves an unlimited number of times. However, unleashing level 3 super moves and desperation moves necessitates both low health and a fully charged power gauge. In a faithful nod to the source material, this groove exclusively offers a sidestep dodge maneuver. Additionally, the gameplay entails a variety of other elements, including the ability to sprint, execute brief jumps, initiate guard cancel counterattacks, and strategically recover from difficult situations. The end groove is much like the system introduced in the King of Fighters 96 and continues.
I don't think I'm definitely not using end groove
stock as their power gauge fills. These stocks can be expended in various ways, including executing super moves or super desperation moves, obtaining temporary boosts to attack and defense.
Super desperation moves is crazy. Some people take like actually knowing how to do combos and stuff on fighting games super serious. And I've seen people look down upon people who do, I guess, spamming and stuff, whatever you call it. Let me know in the comments if y'all disapprove of one-button specials. Do you think fighting games should make you work for the special? Or are you okay with having one-button specials? Because I feel like people are going, you know what? People complain about a lot of stuff, and I feel like that's going to be some people's complaints of making it easier or cheap. Because me, I'm just trying to win. But let me know, like, do y'all approve of one-button specials that they're going to add to the Fighting Collection on some of these games, on Capcom Fighting Collection 2? Let me know.
Or performing a guard cancel for evasive maneuvers. Additional gameplay elements include mechanics like running, short jumping, counter-attacking with guard cancel moves, executing rolling dodges, and initiating full break.
Rolling dodges.
Finally, we have the K-Groove, a gameplay system reminiscent of the Samurai Showdown series, featuring a power bar that gradually fills.
I wonder who's going to use K-Groove.
Upon reaching maximum capacity, indicated by the blazing Akari Rage emblem, the character's appearance will shift to a crimson hue.
I forgot about that.
Gradual depletion. However, this state empowers the character's attacks, infusing them with heightened potency. Furthermore, the character gains the capability to execute level 3 supers during their interval, which persists until the gauge empties and the character's visual presentation reverts to its original state. This particular style of gameplay also incorporates the Just Defend mechanic inspired by Garu Mark of the Wolves. Notable additional gameplay attributes encompass a dashing maneuver, abbreviated jumping techniques, and the ability to counteract falls in a nimble manner. All these grooves present a huge number of options to experiment with, instantly making Capcom vs SNK 2 one of the most rich and diverse fighting games around.
Look at the detail in the background,
only
man.
Just scratching the surface of what this game brings to the table. Another substantial change from its predecessor, and an element that many fans would love with this one, was the return of a traditional 6-button control scheme. Something that had been absent in both the first Capcom vs SNK game and Marvel vs Capcom 2 as well. A popular choice indeed, particularly amongst fighting game diehards. In Polygon's oral history piece on the legacy of the franchise overall, James Chen, a Capcom vs SNK FAQ writer, would comment
Shout
on
out
this
James.
change, noting, when Capcom vs SNK 2 came out, that to me felt like this was the next great Street Fighter game because they added all the grooves. Capcom vs SNK 1, if people don't remember,
only had
players
2
attacks on 4 buttons, and that didn't feel very Street Fighter-y, and I know a lot of people like that. When Capcom vs SNK 2 came out and it went back to 6 buttons, I wrote FAQs for both of those games, and you can kind of see it in my FAQ for Capcom vs SNK 2 that I just keep talking about the fact that it's 6 buttons again and how wonderful it is. I was so happy that it was 6 buttons, and the graphics were so good. The gameplay was really solid in it. It really felt to me like this is where Street Fighter needs to go. In the FAQ itself, I'm like, you've got to play this game. Please play this game because it's so good. Let's make this game popular, you know? I'm practically begging readers to play the game because I was so enamored with it at the time, and I just thought it was going to be the next big thing. Beyond the excellent grooves and lauded control system, we can't talk about Capcom vs SNK 2 without talking about the game's roster. The character select screen offers up a huge selection of 40.
Look at this. Look how many characters is there. This is crazy.
48 fighters to choose
48,
from, which was way more than the game that came before it. The game once again utilises the power of the Sega Naomi arcade board, with the meat and potatoes of this game expectedly consisting of the player selecting a team of fighters from various Capcom and SNK games. They must fight each other's teams, winning battles by defeating all the opponents from the opposing team. Some elements included in the previous game make a return, but many are tweaked, including the ratio system. The first game allowed you to build a team based on certain characters' in-game power levels, which could total up to no more than 4. For example, you could build a team of 4 level 1 characters, have a team of 2 level 2 characters, or fight with 1 level 4 character.
Pretty crazy,
you were all
man.
good as long as the number added up to 4. Regarding the ratios in the game's sequel, teams this time can consist of no more than a maximum of 3 fighters, which I guess makes a lot of sense, as the previous game gave a player an advantage.
One thing I do wish Capcom versus SNK 2 had was the ability to tag out. I don't think you could tag out on this game. I feel like, yeah, we couldn't tag out on this game. You basically had to wait till the next match to choose your other character that you pick out of the 3. Man, if you was able to tag out in this game, it probably would have been better than Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It's up there, and I think that's a bold statement to make, but had we been able to tag out actually on this game, ooh.
Who selected 4 level 1 characters over other combination teams. The old ratio concept in the previous game was a nice idea in theory, but it didn't deliver the most balanced experience. As mentioned earlier, this game contains 48 different fighters, which is a marked improvement over the number included in the previous game. The awesome decision would be made for this game to include fighters from a much broader range of different fighting games than what was offered up prior. As on the Capcom side of things, before, for example, we only had Street Fighter 2 characters and Morrigan. On the Capcom side of things this time, the roster would include, for example, Kyosuke from the Rival Schools franchise and Relento from Final Fight.
Dope.
However, to be fair, Relento did also appear within the Alpha series. Final Fight waifu Maki would also make her way over, and Eagle from the first ever Street Fighter game. Yun from Street Fighter 3 would also be the sole representative from the Street Fighter 3 games, which tells you all you need to know about what Capcom thought of that installment in the series at the time. Regarding SNK newcomers, there would be a lot on their side of things too, including characters being brought over from Garou Mark of the Wolf, Samurai Showdown Art of Fighting, Psycho Soldier and The Last Blade 2, just to name a few games that characters would be drawn from. From all of this, it is clear that the roster is more diverse in terms of franchises included than with the previous game, but it remains very Street Fighter and King of Fighters heavy at its heart, which is nothing to complain about, I suppose.
Nothing at all.
With the many fighters this game includes, you would hope that Capcom would have gone to the effort to redraw many of their sprites to make sure they all fit into this game's new environment and look as awesome as all of the fresh SNK characters they had drawn. But no, sadly, that wasn't the case at all. As amazing as this game is, nearly all of the Capcom character sprites have been plucked from other games, preventing it from feeling completely uniform and a bit lazy in the art direction in places. The most egregious of these is of course the inclusion of Morrigan's 1994 Darkstalker sprite work, which was now 7 years old by this
Hey, that's nasty work. They didn't draw, they just copied and pasted Morgan over there.
point. It almost felt like a running gag, considering how many times across so many games that this exact sprite work have been included in. In contrast, the SNK characters look really nice.
I guess if it ain't broken, don't fix it, right?
Capcom's interpretation of each of them. In terms of the stage backdrops, you will probably notice that the 2D backgrounds from the first game are gone, and 3D backdrops have been drawn in their places. This graphical style is identical to that used in Marvel vs. Capcom 2, which we covered on this channel at an earlier date. As you would expect from a game programmed to run on the Sega Naomi arcade hardware, the first platform the game would arrive on would be the Sega Dreamcast after the arcade. GameSpot would cover the launch of this game in October of 2001, which would only see a release in Japan on this platform due to Sega of America cutting off support to the system in the West by that point. With regards to GameSpot's take on the first console porting of this title, they gave their thoughts, stating they believe the changes in the game will have a more significant impact depending on how serious you are about your 2D fighters. The new additions make the game technically superior to the first, but not necessarily better enough to merit purchase if you already have the first one. GameSpot would go on to criticise the game's 6-button controls, stating they were not suitable for a Dreamcast pad, whilst praising the game's groove system, allowing the player a lot of customisable options. Another aspect they would praise would be a feature they would debut in the console version of this game, which is an unlockable ability to create your own groove, offering even more customization.
Oh, that's dope. I forgot about that.
GameSpot, like myself, would criticise the reuse of many very old sprites in the game, stating, Capcom vs SNK 2 looks about the same as last year's game. It's been said before, but some of these
it looks like
look simply archaic by now.
It looks like it, but it does not play like it. I'm telling you what I know. Capcom vs SNK 2 is a completely different game from the first Capcom vs SNK. Guarantee it.
One-Eyed Sagat hasn't changed since Street Fighter Alpha from 1995, and Morrigan the Succubus from Darkstalkers series dates back even earlier. The game's biggest graphical problem is still that the art style throughout is so inconsistent from character to character. GameSpot would rave about the stage backdrop though, with praise such as the characters all seem to blend in well with the game's attractive new fully 3D backgrounds, which
underrated,
are filled with some really obscure references to some of Capcom's and SNK's older games. The write-up concluded with, fans of the first Capcom vs SNK game should be pleased with the sequel if they don't expect too much from it. Capcom vs SNK 2 offers just enough additions and changes to be justifiable as the next complete game in the series, though it doesn't take any major detours. It's cut from the same cloth as countless other Capcom fighting games, but it's got more features, more depth than a lot of them. Review sources appear to like this Dreamcast game too, with TotalGames.net for example calling it the most beautifully balanced, well-crafted 2D beat-em-up to grace God's fair earth. With a Dreamcast dead and mostly buried in the West, the game would launch worldwide in the living room when it was ported over to the Sony PlayStation 2, a platform which to this very day is still the most popular games console of all time. GameSpot would revisit this game on a different platform literally 1 month later, confirming that the PlayStation 2 version of this 2D fighting game is essentially identical to the Dreamcast version that was recently released in Japan. As a result, the PS2 review for this game by GameSpot is pretty similar to their Dreamcast article, although they did upgrade the review score from 7.8 to 8.1 for what appears to be on account for the fact that the PS2 at the time had less decent 2D fighters than that of the Dreamcast. IGN would praise it too, stating it is a very fine 2D fighter. The only disadvantage to its arrival on the PS2 is its inevitable difficulty caused by the PS2 controller. Past this point, the game would arrive on both the original Xbox and the Nintendo GameCube, meaning that the game had appeared across all 4 major consoles that generation. In fact, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe this was the first Capcom fighting game to appear on a Nintendo console since Street Fighter Alpha 2 on the Super Nintendo, so it had been a while for the big N. The ports of these systems were tweaked from the PS2 and the Dreamcast versions, and as a result the game was released as Capcom vs SNK 2 EO, with the EO standing for Easy Operation. Easy Operation with...
Alright, let's talk about it. Here are my thoughts. Is Capcom vs SNK 2 the greatest fighting game ever? I don't know. Is it better than Marvel vs. Capcom 2? At times it can be though, but Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is just so classic and has so many iconic characters that it's hard to beat it. If we're talking about like 9 and 8, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 would probably be a 9. Capcom vs. SNK 2 would probably be a 8.8. So, but I don't know. I don't know if it's the greatest fighting game ever. I'm not sure though. What do you guys think? Do you think it's the greatest fighting game ever? Like, I mean, it's probably up there. I would say top 10, yeah, top 10. But we talking about number one and number 2, number 3. I don't know, man. That's very debatable. You've seen all the features. You see how many characters? It would say 48 characters. Was it 6 different grooves, fighting styles? Man, a 3D background. Music is dope. It's one of those ones. But y'all let me know how y'all feel about Capcom vs. SNK 2. That's also going to be on the Capcom Fighting Collection 2 in 2025. Y'all let me know how y'all feel. Is it the greatest fighting game ever? And if it's not, then which one is? What's the greatest fighting game ever? But y'all already know it's Dude Man, it's Architect Mr. J with another video. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, notification bell, like, comment, share. Until next time, peace. It's crazy because this fighting collection is harder than Marvel vs. Capcom Fighting Collection. It's beautiful, man. Thank you, Capcom. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening, Capcom. Man, I can't wait. Man, take that game off. Like, man, take this game off, man. I don't know if anybody asked for that. I don't know. It might have a resurgence. We'll see. Love to see it, man. Love to see it.
I ain't never scared, never quitting is the motto.
I'm here for it. I'm here for it all.
Come on, everybody come alive real quick. Battle of the strong, survival of the fit. Take your best shot, hope you don't miss. A new challenger is among us.
They can take it higher, you can take it much farther.
Fast with the hands, eat Honda. Defend my legacy with strength and honor.
They put this together beautifully, man. Coming 2025, let's hope it's early 2025, spring 2025.